Good afternoon, everyone. It is with great pleasure to be speaking with Dr. Mark Skimming today. Mark was Best Young Dentist in Scotland in 2012 and 2014. He and his practices have gained a string of awards since then, including Best Patient Care in Scotland for 5 years, Best Patient Practice in Scotland for 5 years, and Best Treatment of Nervous Patients for 3 years. Since opening his first practice, Dentistry on the Square in Glasgow in 2009, he has grown his business to a group of practices spread across Scotland called the Pain Free Dentistry Group. Mark, you and I have been working together for a number of years on practices that we've brought to the market and you've successfully acquired. It's a great pleasure to be talking to you today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got into dentistry?
Sure, thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me. Yes, background, I am originally from Cumbernauld. I currently stay back in Cumbernauld because that's close to where the babysitters live. I was a practicing dentist. I haven't practiced for the last few years due to other responsibilities within the practice, within the groups. And I qualified in 2005. I was hugely into restorative dentistry. When I qualified, I did a master's in restorative and loved it. But I also loved the running the business side of the practice. My first practice was pretty much a squat. It had historically been a practice, so plumbing and there were chairs and things there. But started that practice off with no patients. Had to seriously learn very quickly through my own ignorance of going into a practice, thinking it would just take off. And through that evolution, I've learned an awful lot. And we built that practice. Started a second practice or acquired a second practice, which is our practice dentistry on the Clyde up in Gourock. And we've just kept building from there. And as that's gone on, I've just kind of transitioned out of clinical work. When my kind of last kind of few years was purely focused on placing implants, where I then saw that my existing associates, who are now partners within the group, were exceeding my capabilities and were better at the clinical work. So I stepped aside and let them take over. And from there, our group has flourished. We've had more practices join the group, more teams, we keep developing. So yeah, things are going really well.
Fantastic, that's great. You touched a bit on the evolution there. How many practices do you own just now, and what are the grand plans for the future?
We have 11 practices in the group just now. We expect to have another 2 coming along in the next few weeks, actually. The grand plans, we don't have any self-limiting thoughts. There's not a magic number to get to. We just want to maximise on our capabilities. We are building as we go. We're reinvesting back into our practices, reinvesting into our infrastructure. But certainly over the next 10 years, we want to be, well above the kind of 25 to 30 practices. And certainly over the next 3 years, we fully expect to be well above the kind of 16, 17 mark in practices as we're going. And as we expect, there'll be a lot of changes in the market over the next few years.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, that's a trend that we're seeing in the marketplace just now, but I think it's easy to go back to that kind of cookie cutter profile of buyer out there who will acquire anything, just add to EBITDA growth. But you've been very selective, haven't you? It's got to be the right practice.
Yeah, we're not. It's not about growth at any costs, and we are very selective in where we go in terms of location, the type of dentistry we feel that we can provide in that location. We do. Our group does have a private focus. There's very little NHS that goes on in the group, and that's not to say that we wouldn't take on an NHS practice, as we have done, and we've bought NHS practices through yourself, Paul, obviously. But we look to really develop the team and make sure that they are being able to provide a type of dentistry that they're really passionate about, and really look forward to coming into their work and developing themselves as they go. So that's a difficult match in NHS dentistry at the moment. And until that changes, our focus would remain on private practice development. So we need practices that we see either are in that region or have an opportunity of development. And most of our practices are in the kind of development region. They're not, we don't take them on as existing private practices. It's ones that we develop the team, the skills and the service capabilities of each practice.
Yeah, fantastic. And whilst you're agile enough to shape those types of businesses, as a result of the pandemic, have you has that assisted in any great way to help you kind of tailor shape your portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, the change that, I mean, everybody will see that there's changes in the market, and people who maybe think of making a decision in 5 years' time have maybe brought it forward a little. I think that we are coming through a wave of dentists who are looking to retire, to get out, get beyond the kind of bureaucracy, get their passion. We have a practice that's joining us at the moment where the existing principal just has a passion for dentistry, and all the bureaucracy that goes alongside that is a weight on him. And so we're in there to support him, develop his skills, and let him work on a day-to-day basis that he wishes to. So I think there's a lot of people having those thoughts at the moment. With everything that's going on and all the challenges that we face in dentistry every day, there are ways of getting back to loving your dentistry again.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that on my journeys, when we're bringing practices to the market, that's something we're seeing often as well. As a result of the pandemic, there's been a profile of practice owner who it's been a difficult time, but enjoyed not working at full capacity again. It's almost been a kind of trial into semi-retirement almost. And as you say, the bureaucracy of going back into the NHS and that hamster wheel again has kind of proven quite difficult for quite a lot of people. Equally, I think those core NHS businesses that didn't diversify into private treatments before and now are, they have a degree of confidence that they're able to offer that within their practice. So it's been an interesting trend that's emerged.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see there's been a bit of a change in mindset in some aspects. There's so many practices have been on that hamster wheel, having to work so hard and to make ends meet and keep your practice going. And we don't realize that kind of 5% improvement of speed or efficiencies that you've had to create every year. Then when that's come to a stop, all of a sudden you're sitting back, dentists have sat back and realized that I've been doing too much. It's not the correct work-life balance, and the profession has been working so hard for so long in an underfunded system. So having been there myself and working clinically in the NHS and seen it firsthand of how hard you have to work to try and make it work, we've just had to refocus in that development, and that's where currently I see it that private dentistry is really the only long-term sustainability for your average GP practice.
Yeah. With that view from an operator's perspective, how have you found the response from patients within the practices during the COVID period?
The broad response has been that patients are really grateful that because we have been private focused, that we have stayed open and continued to, whether that NHS or private, have continued to deliver the same service. Although we have had to slow down, our teams have been absolutely fantastic, and we've gone to slightly expanded hours and making sure that we are delivering the best that we possibly can. So our patients have been very, very appreciative. We have also had a lot of patients come from other practices. And we've been clear with those patients that NHS dentists in particular have had one hand tied behind their back for the way that the system works. So we've had a lot of new patients throughout our group, right across the country. So
fantastic.
That just helped build things further for us as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I even see it from my kind of own personal perspective. My own NHS dentist pre-COVID has converted now fully private. And I remember that first conversation, he handed over an envelope. He was a bit nervous. He was a bit kind of sheepish in saying that he is now converting to go fully private, and here's the fee list, etc. And from a patient's perspective, from the consumer's perspective, it just felt like a no-brainer. It was an easy decision to make. He's a great dentist, and I suppose you have an allegiance towards your own dentist anyway, and you could absolutely see that you were getting something extra for what was on offer.
Yeah, there's been a real realization during this period of time. I mean, we're going through it at a couple of practices that have had NHS historically, and it's a lot of the time the barrier is in the heads, not of just the dentist, but the whole team, or how patients will react. Now, not every patient will be happy with that. You will have degrees of conversations and comments from patients that will be uncomfortable, but 95% plus, I've been generous in saying 95% or 5% will be a challenge. The practices I see are a lot happier when they've gone through that process, and having looked back at the process, they go, oh, it wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be. Actually, it was pretty straightforward, but it is that thing in the road where you just see there's a bump coming here, and how are patients going to react. And so beforehand, they feel a little uneasy about it, but when it's done, you go, okay, that's one of the best decisions we've made, and we can now really focus on the quality of care that we're delivering our patients without that, kind of one hand tied behind their back. Yeah,
fantastic. And I suppose this is kind of up for hot debate just now. It's been referenced in a lot of conversations, is that this trend that we're seeing, this high demand from a private dentistry perspective, and patients who are very much kind of leaning towards that direction. Do you see that momentum abating anytime soon? Do you think that bubble's going to burst, or?
No, I don't, in all honesty. I mean, with practices reopening, some degree of NHS being offered again, there will be, it will shift back a little. I think particularly in those areas where it's a bit more of a challenge to be able to convert to a private focused practice. But anybody who really focuses on their quality of care, their relationships with their patients, and the service that they provide, I really think that, almost any practice in a suitable area, and when I say suitable area, I don't mean affluent areas. We have practices that are not in affluent areas that do extremely well. I think that, just a suitable area that you can attract a large enough population, or be able to deliver a specific service to them, as well as building really good relationships with your patients. I think almost any practice has that capability.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really interesting point. There's a misconception in the marketplace, isn't there, that some of the best private practices have to be or need to be in those salubrious locations. Where if you think of that type of mindset, that demographic of patient base doesn't generally need a lot of dentistry, do they?
You and I see behind the curtain in an awful lot of practices. You see, vast more practices than I do, but for all the ones that I go see and I look at their accounts, you have some fantastic practices in areas that you would not assume that a private practice would survive, and they're not just doing well. Some of them are absolutely exceptional. They really are.
Absolutely. They are some of the best and most consistent businesses that we've seen. They've managed to carve out their position, and from a marketing perspective, they're offering something different, aren't they? So, is there any kind of closing thoughts that you want to talk about from your perspective?
Yeah, with those practices, I mean, they have loads of opportunity to develop. And what I see is when you have a team and a culture and a focus on not just the clinical care, you have to have 100% of the quality of clinical care. That is a given, but when the other 80% of the practice is all about the service delivery. And when you have that focus as well, because that's something that we're not taught, there isn't an industry standard of how good the service would be. If you can focus on that and the culture of the team, so that you're confident that that's going to continue to be delivered, then that's where I'm saying almost any practice has the opportunity to convert towards a different type of non-HS dentistry that they wish to, be that through plan, through that pay-as-you-go, as a private basis, and a number of these ones, even kind of comprehensive care plans as well. All these opportunities are available.
Oh, fantastic. Well, speaking firsthand, you've definitely nailed that model, Mark. So it's fantastic to see how well your group's doing, and thank you for your time today discussing your business with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you.